That weekend, there's no purple football, and then we're going to have about 38 or 39 more weeks of that, heading into September of next year. It's going to be a long off season around here. They're going to be playing some football. This guy chronicles all the on and off the field nonsense going on in the NFL this week. He began the coaching carousel on Monday and Black Monday at Sports Illustrated. He's one of our defending champions, hailing from Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the Terps are going to go do some battle with his Wolverines this weekend in basketball. We welcome Chris Burke back from Sports Illustrated. You can follow his journey and all of his NFL coverage, including a bunch of mock draft stuffs that he's working on at Chris Burke _SI and at SI.com. Well, the Lions are in the tournament up there, right? So at least one state is happy for at least a few more hours. I tell you, it hasn't been a good look for the Lions the last couple weeks, though.
No, I was at that game Sunday night, and the first half went pretty well for them, and then they just sort of the same story as the week before against the Cowboys. Just kind of got outclassed for the second half there, and I don't really know. It's an interesting spot for them because if they lose this week, and I'm assuming for them all that they lose in Seattle, that would be 4 straight losses to close the season and throw away the division title. And I don't know. Jim Caldwell's sort of one of the names you kind of circle and maybe wait and see if we might have another coach opening in a week or two here.
Well, man, Terrell Austin may have a job somewhere else by then. I mean, there's so many jobs out there, and on the Lions and them. Look, I was going to say they've looked bad since Plimpton, haven't they? Pretty much, right?
Yeah. I think it was funny. I was there. People were very excited this week for that game.
I know they were, and
I
I bleed for the poor folks in the Honolulu Blue. My boy Schwartzy couldn't get it done. Caldwell's an old pal. I mean, at some point, better them than the Cowboys or the Giants, right? Or the Packers for crying out loud, right?
I was going to say, it was there. I was in the stadium about 3 hours early, and they had the games on. They had the Giants-Redskins game on some of the TVs around there, and there was just such a huge cheer when Washington lost that game because I think Lions fans were expecting to get beat by the Packers, so they just wanted to get in and get a spot, not really have to worry about it. So, like I said, I think people there are excited that they're in. But the expectations definitely have changed in the last 3 weeks for Detroit.
Man, expectations for everybody's a mess, though, right? I mean, I saw the Vegas odds come back on Oakland. Oakland's 115-1 to win the Super Bowl. It's almost like they didn't make the playoffs. It's like they're not even in the tournament. But this is what happens at the end when you don't have a quarterback. I know Cincinnati went through this last year. Houston's gone through it in the past where we beat the snot out of them with a third-string quarterback. Oakland, Houston, Miami, all struggling at this point, right?
Yeah, and that Oakland-Houston game, I don't know. I don't know that that's the one you want to be kicking off the playoffs with, but it is tough. I mean, I will give Miami credit because they have played pretty well, although they lost this past week to the Patriots. They have played pretty well with Matt Moore in there. I think he's, as far as backup quarterbacks go, he's at least someone you can put in and still kind of stretch the field and take some shots and think you have a chance to win games.
I didn't even know he was in the league, man, right? I mean, Matt Moore, he comes in for Tannehill 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, so where's he? Oh, he's been there the last 5 years? And he's been hanging out learning that offense. So to some degree, you'd like to think that, any of these understudies, when they've stuck around a couple of years, could at least come in and not embarrass themselves and not look like they don't belong, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess at least for Houston's sake, too, they're back to their original starter, for better or worse. So it's someone that's been there, not there in the playoffs, but been in that starting spot for that team. I mean, Oakland's going in, sounds like we'll be going in fresh completely with Connor Cook, who will to make your first NFL start in the playoffs is it's just sort of unfathomable at this point. I don't know if anyone really knows what to expect. I mean, I actually think that he gives them a better chance to win that game than Matt McGloin does because he throws a really nice deep ball. He's played in some big games when he was at Michigan State. But I also think he puts on the table the possibility of just a horrible loss if he's not ready for that stage. So a pretty wide swing of what you could expect from that Oakland-Houston game.
Well, and I think it's where Pittsburgh and Green Bay are sitting, at home this weekend. They're the two flavors of the week, right? Those are the teams you'd say, well, Green Bay could go to Dallas and win, and Pittsburgh could go to New England and win. Meanwhile, Kansas City and Atlanta are sort of, buzzing around, and they're hanging out this week and getting a game plan together for some version of these messes coming out of this weekend. But it's Dallas and New England's world, right? I mean, it would be shocking if they're not in Houston when we get together in a couple weeks, right?
I think it'd be shocking if New England's not there. That would be, again, those are the two teams you mentioned, Kansas City and Pittsburgh. Those are the two. I think either of those teams are capable of beating New England just the one shot. They had a really good game. Alex Smith plays all right, and that Kansas City defense forced some turnovers, or Roethlisberger just, goes for 400 and they win a shootout. I think those teams are capable of beating New England, but it'd be very surprising at this point if it's not the Patriots out of the AFC. The NFC, I still think is pretty wide open. I think Dallas, we've seen them be the best team, except for when they play the Giants. I don't know if they really want that third shot at the Giants or if they'd prefer the Packers to win this week, because that's really the only team that's giving them trouble. But, I still think defensively there are some questions there. I do think you kind of wait to see what Dak Prescott will be like on the playoff stage. I don't know that you worry about him too much at this point. But that defense still has some holes. So if you run into, if they get Green Bay next week or they have to play Atlanta in the NFC Championship game, those will be tough draws for them. Because I don't know that they're not really built to win a shootout. So if another team comes in and hangs 21 on the board in the first half, it certainly gets a lot trickier for them.
Chris Burke joining us here from Sports Illustrated. He's out in the great state of Michigan where the Detroit Lions are headed to Seattle. I don't think that'll be a Lions den out there. If you want atmosphere, they'll certainly be providing that for the 12th man on Saturday night out in Seattle. They're crazy out there.
Yeah, it sounds like the night game, too, sounds like maybe some snow and some rain, which the Lions have only played outside like 4 times. This will only be like their 4th outdoor game this year, and they've been bad when they've been outdoors, and they've been bad when they've been on the road, too. So, I think there's some questions about what Seattle is. Again, we're wondering about a lot of these teams for it being the first week of the playoffs. Seattle doesn't look like a Super Bowl team right now. Their offensive line's been bad, and their defense has been bad because of their injuries. They just haven't been able to pick up the pieces there. So who knows? Maybe they are kind of ripe for an upset. It's really hard to see Detroit going in there and winning, given how Detroit's been playing.
No, who cares who wins these games? We all know the real drama's with the bad teams hiring coaches, right? What a carousel we put together here this year. I don't know that it's all done, to your point. If Detroit loses 4 games in a row and goes out, who knows how Mama's going to react to that up there. But around the league, there's a lot of bad jobs, traditionally bad jobs, bad owners. And here we go again in Buffalo and in Jacksonville and in San Francisco and these places, San Diego, where they seemingly can't get out of their own way. The Rams ran to L.A. Now they're trying to find a coach, and San Diego may be joining them up there soon. It's going to be a very, very eventful offseason here off the field, right?
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned what is interesting and why we see some of these teams have to go through this so many times. I think the 49ers, it's been such a disaster there since they forced Harbaugh out. I don't think they really even had a feel for what went wrong, and now they're trying to start over and figure it out. And that roster, look, maybe Chip Kelly is just not meant for the NFL, but I don't know that you probably could have put Belichick there this year, and that would have been a 5-win team. It was just a really, really bad roster. So I don't, 1 year is not really enough of a shot in the NFL. And Buffalo certainly is not coming out of this looking great. The way this has all gone down and the way they've handled the Tyrod Taylor situation, and with him now looking like he'll head to free agency, so they're back to trying to sell this coaching gig without a quarterback and maybe facing a rebuild of their own in the coming couple years. So I don't know. I don't know which of those teams gets up off the mat first. I kind of hesitate. I'm sort of waiting and seeing if maybe Jacksonville can figure it out. got new ownership relatively recently, and they seemed like they were very committed to staying patient and trying to work with their plan, and just never paid off for them.
Well, they win the draft every year, right? I mean, every year they're drafting somebody that we're going to hear about until they're 3-11, and we don't hear about them again anymore.
And they did have, I mean, Jalen Ramsey's been very good for them, and their pass defense was kind of quietly one of the better pass defenses in football, and they still were an awful team, and Blake Bortles regressed, and it just, I don't know. I mean, that to be as bad as they've been now for several years, and in that division, the change was way overdue there. Just curious if it's one of those spots where you can win again, or if they're stuck now in 2-3 decades of being what they are now.
Well, this Denver job looks like a good job on the face of it, but you don't really have a quarterback unless you think Paxton Lynch is one or Simeon really is one. You certainly have a defense that's getting a little longer in the tooth and has all of that hangover of cap issues and having won a Super Bowl and then working for John Elway out there and coming in on the backside. The Peyton Manning thing was pretty special, but it's been relatively pedestrian around there other than Peyton Manning and that little blip and that little shot in the arm that he provided them. I don't know that that's a wonderful job given the Kansas City and Oakland look to be on the come. That's certainly not an easy division there, and high expectations as well.
Yeah, I think it'll be. I think the kind of the X factors there are what kind of relationship are you going to have with Elway? I think that is sort of a curiosity at this point because he's obviously a guy who wants to be, as GM, he's involved in the personnel moves, but it seems like he wants to be involved beyond that to the point where he almost wants to dictate what's happening on a lineup in the lineup on a week-to-week basis. So how does he work with the next coach who comes in? I mean, I will say I think that they still have high hopes for Paxton Lynch. I think they were viewing Trevor Siemian as a bridge quarterback that they hoped could be better than what he was. I mean, I think he actually was fine as a bridge quarterback. I think he had an okay year, which is all you can really ask of a guy, just that the defense wasn't as good as it was last year. So it looked a lot worse than it did when Peyton Manning struggled. I think Trevor Siemian served his purpose. I think they'll try to see if Paxton Lynch can be their guy, but maybe they go out and make one of the big splashy moves. Maybe that's where Tyrod Taylor lands up. Maybe they call about Tony Romo. So I don't know. And then the other X factor is if Wade Phillips is still going to be there. He's been the guy who's leading that defense the last couple of years. You certainly can't overlook the impact he had last year in winning the Super Bowl and this year in keeping them afloat as long as they were. If he's gone, that becomes a much bigger challenge for the next coach coming in if he has to hire a new defensive coordinator and possibly switch that scheme.
He is Chris Burke from Sports Illustrated. You can follow his journey out at SI.com as well as out on Twitter at Chris Burke. That's got the silent E _SI, not like Matt Burke, more like Sean Burke, right? So there we go. A little hockey reference there for you. Last thing for you, the Ravens are one of these 8-8 places now, right? I mean, certainly wasn't the best look against the Bengals over the weekend. They're below us, but there's a whole bunch of teams that aren't firing their coach, that didn't make the playoffs, that are in sort of this middle area. And for the Ravens now, 3 out of 4 years not having made the playoffs. Harbaugh announces that he's not going to make coaching changes to the coordinators on Tuesday morning. This is a precarious spot for the Ravens and the Bengals and the Broncos and these other teams that are sort of in the middle of nowhere right now, but not in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's all. It's really the worst place to be because, like you said, you're not in and you're not getting a top 10 draft pick, so it makes it a little harder to find those impact guys. And certainly you can in the middle of round 1 and middle of round 2, but it's not as obvious a spot as in the top 5. So you have to be smarter about what you're doing and more precise about what you're doing. And I think it is an important offseason for those teams because those are. Like the Ravens haven't been where they want to be for the past few seasons now, so I think it was at least mildly surprising that they're keeping everything together there because you do run the risk of things going stale, and I think that's what's happened in Cincinnati. I don't know that there's a quick fix in Cincinnati. That's a team that's let a lot of talent walk away in the past few years and plugged in with younger guys and tried to stay with a pretty cheap payroll and just build from within, and it's worked for this nice stretch they've been on, but it puts you in a pretty bad position when the wheels suddenly fall off with injuries and underachieving players, because you don't really have anything to fall back on then. You've been playing, you've bumped all your young guys up the depth chart. And
well, they haven't drafted high either. I mean, they don't have top 10 picks the last 5-6 years because they've been good. That's the punishment for being good, right?
Right, yeah. And so that's been a challenge for them. I think they've done a great job for this stretch, but they never got over the top in the playoffs. And again, that was a spot I thought, I think a lot of people thought maybe there would be some significant changes, because it feels like the Marvin Lewis era and what they can do there has run its course. So I don't know exactly where they go from here. I mean, I think the Ravens, it's tough because they're not a bad team. I think, again, that's what makes that so difficult. They're a team that they weren't great this year, certainly, but you're 1 yard away from being in the playoffs as a division champion. So you're not exactly going back to the drawing board and erasing everything and starting from scratch. Sometimes it's those, little tweaks that become a lot tougher than having to do a total rebuild.
Hey, we're coming out there to play a little basketball this weekend in Ann Arbor. Jim Harbaugh's still going to be there, right? He's not going to take the 49ers job again, right?
I mean, I hope so.
I hear him rumored to the NFL, and I'm thinking, could he be that unhappy in Ann Arbor already? I mean, I think it's, him, Gruden, Dungy, my partner, Billick, they all get rumored to jobs, but I don't think Harbaugh's any closer to going back to the NFL than John Gruden is, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think it's possible that it happens at some point. I don't think it happens now or really anytime in the near future. I think maybe if you get 5-10 years down the road, I think he, for his pride, needs to beat Urban Meyer once and needs to win the Big Ten, and maybe needs to win a national championship before he goes back to the NFL. I think it's a challenge he might take on again at some point. I don't think there was any chance it was happening this offseason. I mean, I guess I could be proven wrong, but it's not a spot where you're going to give him more money than what Michigan's giving him either. So you can't pull him away by saying, here's a record-setting NFL contract, because I think Michigan would probably be willing to match a lot of that. So
they have money there too. They have donors in Michigan, from what I understand.
Yeah,
yes.
I think he's there. I don't know. Maybe they can. John Beilein is the guy who's been taking some heat around here lately, to be honest. For the basketball team, can't seem to get back to the contention quite the way people were expecting. But that should be a good game. What's that? Maryland just had a pretty tough loss, right?
Yeah. Nebraska beat Indiana before that. I mean, it's Big Ten's up in the air. We got Indiana on Tuesday night, so if the Terps are looking past the Wolverines, it's because Crean's bringing his boys in from Bloomington on Tuesday night, so that'll be the biggest game on the calendar for the Terps this year at home. We don't play all the teams twice. Most of them only play once, but we'll see Michigan. We'll be out in Ann Arbor on Saturday, and I'm sure you'll be checking all things in Seattle as the Lions head out there. Chris, always great to have you on, man. Happy New Year to you, and we'll keep checking in with you. I know it's your favorite time of the year. It's draft season now officially, right?
Yeah, we're official now.
How many mocks will you do? 32? What's the over-under on mocks between now and April 28th?
As many as they tell me to do. I think we're at 3 or 4 already, so I would guess we're probably going to get into close to double digits before all is said and done.
One for every day of the year so far.
Maybe we'll get a few picks right at some point.
Well, we'll figure out who's going to be picking a lot of these. A lot of these bad coaching jobs do come with a good draft pick at least. So that's the booby prize there. Chris, great having you on, man. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Always a pleasure. Chris Burke from Sports Illustrated joining us here. You can follow him out on Twitter at ChrisBurke_SI and at SI.com. You can find me in the Bio Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world, including Michigan, even the Upper Peninsula. You can grab me there. Download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Morning newspaper reaches your email inbox at 7 a.m. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. And last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.